to make it seem as though there is a necessary reason for these sanctions. I'm not going to fucking put up with that shit. That's it. That's it. I've seen the impact. I've stared these people in the fucking eyes, okay? I cannot turn around. I cannot fucking turn around and act as though there is an alternative reason for why this exists. Okay? The goal here is obviously to bring awareness to the blockade. And the American government spent 60 fucking years saying it's not the blockade. The blockade doesn't exist, while simultaneously enforcing it to use that weird invisibility of the blockade, the system of bureaucracy that's implemented, to say it's actually the Cuban government's fault. It's actually communism's fault. That's kind of the point. And I will be addressing this in the mini doc that we put together. Austin Ox is working on it right now. I basically landed in Cuba and spent every moment that I had. I didn't participate in a lot of the stuff and any of the stuff really that the Progressive International was doing, which is why it's also like additionally funny. While they're on the one hand, they're lying about like the events that took place. On the other hand, they keep saying I was a principal participant of these events that took place. I wasn't. I didn't do anything with Progressive International, even though I love those guys and they did fantastic work out there, because I locked in with Belly of the Beast, the independent news outlet in Cuba, one that I really, really leaned into. I mean, they're fucking incredible. They do incredible work. Shouts out to Belly of the Beast. I will forever ride for them. Okay, they give me a little mug too. I spent every moment just conducting interviews, like talking to regular Cubans, talking to people that are doing incredible work, and investigating like how this complex system of restrictions has actually harmed Cuban production every step of the way. That was my goal, because I had talked to a lot of people ahead of time of this trip. Some people who legitimately said things like, Hasan, you don't understand. It's actually the Cuban government is incredibly repressive. They're very bad. They're not responsive to the needs of the people. They're hoarding antibiotics. Like, I heard so much from people who were otherwise kind people at times, and they were just deluded. And it made me think there has to be a reason for, why people are saying this stuff. Like, there has to be some truth to this. And it wasn't just Cubans that were saying it. There's a lot of, Americans that are even remotely well-read on the situation have read the State Department talking points for the most part. So I wanted to figure that out. I wanted to investigate that. And that's precisely what I did. It's decades of propaganda, and it's so silly. Like, you can kind of imagine how silly it is, especially if you go to Cuba. You very quickly understand that like almost everything that you learn about Cuba is just ridiculous, either a great exaggeration or just an outright lie. Hasan, go to Gaza. Hasan, go to Cuba. Okay, Hasan, why did you actually go and show the truth? You need to be locked up. Also, here's a list of imperial rules designed to kill these people you're helping. Yeah, I know. They say I sit around and farm donations at home when I cover this stuff. And then when I go there, they say, how dare you go there? You're performative. Kind of feels like they just don't want me to go there or do anything. It just kind of feels like they just don't want me to say or do anything at all, right? Like, it's more so the fact that I'm doing something that is very frustrating for them. It's just an unbelievable amount of lies have been told about this trip. And obviously, because everyone on this trip are in Cuba and they don't have access to the internet, they had, myself included, had no way of knowing what the fuck people were saying and what kind of insane, unhinged propaganda was like being slung around. Anyway, I guess this is like one of the TikToks that was like in defense of what was going on.
About people coming here to Cuba to deliver humanitarian aid are very interesting to me. One of the headlines and some of the commentary that I've seen is in terms of all of the people that came here and they stayed at a 4-star hotel while the rest of Cuba was in darkness. I want to remind you all that while it's not illegal for American citizens to come here to Cuba, it is absolutely illegal for us to stay in any of these hotels that you see on this screenshot. We cannot stay at all of these listed brand hotels. We cannot stay at a mom and pop hotel. We cannot stay at anywhere that is Cuban owned in Cuba, because that was instated by your United States government. And those who do stay with Cuban families, because the first time I came to Cuba in November, I stayed with a family. They actually have to take our passport numbers and register us because of our United States government. Again, it is not illegal for American citizens to travel to Cuba. However, just like the sanctions and the blockade, the United States government makes damn sure that we don't support the Cuban people. The second thing I saw was, oh, all of these influencers spent all of this money when they just could have given it to the Cuban people. How? Do you know that because of the blockade and the sanctions, that United States citizens cannot send money?
Yes, it's crazy. People don't realize, like, all of that aid, we had to literally physically send it there. Okay. Like, someone had to physically put that aid in the hands of Cubans. Okay. That's another crazy part of this where people are like, oh, you don't understand. Like, why didn't they just send the aid? It's like, you're a fucking idiot. You think we didn't think about this? Not only was there like a cultural component to this humanitarian aid trip, because like there's so much orientalization that's going on here. Like you're treating the regular Cuban citizens like they're fucking animals. It's disgusting. Like the way you're talking about it, like you think they don't experience joy. You think they don't care about art. You think they don't care about being treated like fucking human beings. It's disgusting. There's so much like speaking over regular Cubans that are living in Cuba in this conversation that is mind-boggling. It's alarming. It's gross. And I cannot believe how much both liberals and fucking right-wingers have engaged in this. Like, it's crazy to me. One of the craziest pieces of misinformation was that kneecap guys like sucked up all the energy and killed Cubans in a hospital. The reason why the Cuban hospital ran out of energy is not because the fucking electricity grid is falling apart. I mean, that's part of it for sure, of course, but there's not enough gas on the island for their generators to work. That is our fault. America, we did that. Okay, what do you think is going to happen when we've starved this island of necessary resources by stopping other countries from being able to freely trade with Cuba? It's illegal for America to implement this blockade. It's legal to trade with Cuba. It's legal to import Cuban goods. It's legal to export Cuban goods. It's unfucking believable. It's unbelievable. Kneecap participated in one of the many daily festivals that happen during the day. Okay? That festival that they participated in had Cuban musicians that were also participating in it. It was free for all Cubans to attend, and it was overwhelmingly Cubans that were there. It blows my fucking mind that these people can be so cynical and so gross that they think that like regular everyday Cubans don't want to experience fucking joy. It blows my mind. You just don't even want to think. Like, you literally can see it. You can see it in real time. You can see Cubans dancing, singing, having a good time. And you're like, oh, they must be brainwashed. Someone was claiming that they were being bribed with treats. I saw your reply to this guy too. Yeah, this is the liberal version of this, right? Cuban doctors told me they have to sew up patients mid-surgery when the generators run out of gas, but MAGA on here are too busy lying about lying about the people that went out to Cuba with aid to turn everything into a distractive spectacle. Pure MAGA propaganda. You are cattle if you fall for it. The audacity to be on your laptop tweeting from a five-star hotel powered by generators while the local hospital goes dark. You are truly, genuinely a psychopath. Wow. This guy is one of the biggest, most troubled, most schizophrenic, vulgar demons I have ever encountered in my fucking life. And he has the audacity to claim that he is a humanitarian and a liberal. Shame on this fucking piece of shit. Shame on you. Unfucking believable. Unfucking believable. I wasn't even in Cuba when I tweeted this, for the record. But it doesn't matter. It's all misinformation. I couldn't tweet this from Cuba because there was not only was there not electricity, but there was also no internet. Like, there was just not enough internet. The infrastructure is crumbling because of what we have done. God, it's fucking nasty. What a nasty piece of shit this guy is. Shame on you. If you have the capacity to feel shame, that is. You don't. Oh, unfucking believable. Unfucking believable. I mean, I dunked on him too, and he lost his mind. There was a couple like ultras that were also saying some dumb shit too, and I had some strong words for them too. I cannot believe it. I cannot. It's just, it really, I saw the best in humanity with regular, everyday, ordinary Cubans trying to make the best trying to make the most of their horrible circumstances. And then I come back and I see people on the sidelines trying to do their very best to continue justifying the asphyxiation that we have implemented on this island. The people died because you morons threw a giant party and sucked up all the electricity. These are fucking Cubans, man. These are everyday Cubans having a great time on a free concert that was thrown together. And it wasn't just kneecap. It was like, Cuban artists that were also participating in it. I say you're a fucking insanely indecent person and you should really think hard about why you're repeating obvious moronic lies that MAGA is spamming on the timeline, vicious scumbag. I think I cannot believe that the average person is this indecent. I think this is cynicism born out of just like being on this website. I cannot believe that people could be like this. Was reading on Dropsite that when the power goes out, the doctors in pediatric hospitals have to hand pump the ventilators for babies. Dropsite got this reporting from Belly of the Beast. Yes, that's precisely the case. I talked to a doctor, like I said in the tweet that this fucking dipshit was responding to. I talked to a doctor that told me in our interview, when the power goes out, when the generators fail and they're mid-surgery, they just basically sew the patient back up and they go, we'll try again later. Unfucking believable, dude. Unfucking believable. Did you hang at the Malakon at night? People are dancing, making music all night long. It's beautiful. Yeah. I didn't. I went to just a couple different like bars. The first night I went to a bar with the Kneecap Boys, it was awesome. I had a great time there. We just dumped a lot of cash to the best of our ability on everyday Cubans. But it was much better, in my opinion, to just like go to like regular bars and regular restaurants that were, operating in spite of the circumstances, because it was, there were just like real regular Cubans there. It was crazy when you mentioned NeuroSim, and then you had people argue deep in the comments how it's fake or not a real cure, or whatever. There are a million cures. Made me so goddamn mad. Americans would rather die than admit a foreign enemy has any benefit. Exactly. They do not want to comprehend like real shit. They just, if it goes against their priors, they just go, no, that's not real. I don't believe it. I don't want to believe it. It's unbelievable. It's a lie. It's crazy. Never seen anything like it. Mart said, out of Cuba now, on the way home, and finally have access to the internet. I'm having a hard time putting into words the thoughts I have on my experience there the past couple of days. The level of cruelty to the oil blockade the U.S. imposed on the day-to-day lives of everyday Cubans cannot be overstated. Everyday conveniences and essential services that we take for granted are completely non-existent. Entire systems that were already dilapidated by decades of sanctions and restrictions from participating globally start to break down exponentially when you remove fuel from the equation. The innovation required to accomplish the most basic tasks is astounding. People existing at night in complete darkness of the blackouts, just trying their best to lead normal lives in spite of the lack of power. Yet every Cuban person I met was extremely kind, patient, and welcoming. The resilience of the people of the island is extremely admirable and heartbreaking to witness. Cuba is a beautiful place with amazing people and insane potential. What the U.S. has done to that island is shameful and nothing short of inhumane. It's an experience that I think every American should have. It will change you. When Ben Rhodes told me before I went to Cuba that I was going to be very sad, he was somewhat right. I landed and I could not believe how beautiful this island was. I could not believe how beautiful the people were. That was my first reaction. I was like, wow, I'm not a big nature guy, but this is one of the coolest places I've ever been to in my life. And then it was an emotional roller coaster. It turned into deep sadness. You arrive in Havana and you start seeing the trash that can't be collected because there's not enough oil and gas. There's not enough oil to operate the trash trucks, right? And then you're like, it's fucked up. It's fucked up what we've done. You see the houses that are dilapidated, people living in them. It looks like, they were bombed out. The outside looks so pretty, but the paint is chipping. Part of that is obviously the salt water that destroys the paint, right? It requires a tremendous amount of upkeep that this unfortunately poor island does not have, right? You get a little surprised too. The expectation is all the cars are going to be from the 50s. That's not the case. There's new vehicles in Cuba, and there's also still vehicles driving around. It's very limited in comparison to like what the normal traffic would look like on the island, from what I understand from people that have been there prior. There's a tremendous amount. I mean, there's a queue system that the government has implemented. There is obviously a lot of, not hoarding necessarily, but like stockpiling of the strategic reserves so they can just like hopefully continue surviving to the best of their ability. And then after that sadness goes away, you get angry because you start thinking about why these are the conditions that regular Cubans are subjected to. And you realize, like, we fucking did this. And we're still doing this. And so many fucking Americans are oblivious, or the ones who at least know what's going on in Cuba defend it and repeat lies. It's unbelievable, dude. And then, that anger never really goes away. But, I guess that anger transfers to the way that some deeply disturbed pieces of shit and the way that they operate. And your anger basically turns into not just anger against the American government, but against the anger that you experience from people who justify this stuff. It is unfucking believable until you go there and you talk to the people who are directly involved in the distribution of pharmaceutical products, the people that are responsible for the creation of medicine, the people that are responsible for the logistics of delivering the medication. Until you see that with your own two eyes, you're like, there's maybe some of this has to be mismanagement by the government, right? And then you talk to these people and you're like, oh my fucking God. Oh my fucking God. It's unbelievable. Amazing how the media can tell you all about human rights abuses in Iran, but when the U.S. is causing people on ventilators to die in Cuba, there's radio silence. Apparently human rights only matter when we need an excuse to start a war. Yes, that is precisely the case. It is not dissimilar to what you knew prior to October 7 about everyday Palestinian existence, if you knew anything at all, versus what you know now, okay? Because it's the same forces of Western empire, Western imperialism, that have created this hermetically sealed information vacuum to make you believe a falsehood. It's that simple. It's just, there's no other way to describe it other than American state-sponsored propaganda. And it's pervasive, and I got to see it in real time. You know how sometimes I'll talk about how misinformation on the internet spreads about things that you and I experience together when I'm live streaming? Oftentimes it's about silly shit like, oh, Zohran Mamdani hates Hasan Piker. He disinvited him from the event that I attended, right? Like the event that I was literally at. And you'll be like, why the fuck do people believe this? This is so crazy. Because it leans into like a comfortable narrative, right? That's obviously unimpactful. That's not like a significant story, but like this is being mass produced in a similar way for a much more consequential version of events. It's the same with Iran and the sanctions regime against Iran. It's the same with Cuba. It's unfucking believable. Hasanabi blaming it all on the U.S. shifts the problem away from the fact that Cuba has systemic issues with an authoritarian government and their planned economy. Blame needs to go both ways. Yeah, no, you're a fucking delusional moron if you think that that's the case. Okay? Sorry, it's just the truth. There is literally, once you see it, it's impossible for you to unsee it. Okay? It's absolutely ridiculous. You are making shit up. When you see some of these interviews, you will fucking understand exactly what I'm talking about, okay? I'll give you a teaser. One example, and there are millions of examples like this. I'll start with one example. I talked to a surgeon. He is a highly esteemed facial reconstruction surgeon. There's a lot of people who need jaw reconstruction because they have lung cancer or throat cancer. And this surgeon goes in and does this incredibly complex procedure where they rebuild a jaw for the patients. And, there are more old school methods in the reconstruction process. And then there are newer methods that are available. There's a 3D printer. So this guy that I interviewed, okay, I'll tell you his name. Guillermo Sanchez. He's a jaw surgeon. We took a photo with some of his students and other doctors as well. You might have seen it. So he's a world-renowned expert in facial reconstruction surgery. And I was talking to him about how the stuff works. He said that obviously they can't purchase any medical equipment that has 10% or above American components, right? So that right off the jump is crazy, because the way commerce works, the way international trade works, like there's a lot of shit that has 10% or above American components in it, right? So what these guys have to do is find alternatives, oftentimes in Germany or France, right? They make medical equipment. So he finds a German company that's willing to sell this 3D printer. It's multiple millions of dollars, right? And they get charitable contributions, charitable donations. They get the funds together and they buy this thing and they start using this 3D printer to do the facial reconstruction surgeries, to build these new jaws for these patients in Cuba. Long story short, the machine breaks. Now it's a German machine. Germany's not America. It doesn't have American components in it. But it's a very complex machine. And in order to fix it, in order to repair the machine, you need either a German engineer to come to Cuba and fix it personally, or at least like be able to teach a Cuban engineer to be able to fix it. There's proprietary tech in this, obviously, so they're not going to do that. They have to send a German engineer. So he calls up the German company and he says, hey, we bought this piece of equipment. Unfortunately, it's broken. We need a technician. And the German business says, sorry, we can't do it because we're afraid of American punishments. We cannot send a technician, nor can we send the necessary components to fix this multiple $million piece of equipment. So now it's just sitting in a fucking room. Now it's just sitting in a fucking room. And the impact of that is that either many of the Cuban patients that need this reconstructive surgery don't get it and they have to go back to like older methods, or if there's any sort of 3D printing that takes place, they have to go to Mexico. They have to go to their Mexican counterparts and lean into their Mexican counterparts or their Canadian counterparts in the field of medicine that are willing to take time out of their day to recreate these jaws so they can send it to Cuba, adding an unnecessary part into the process. Isn't that fucking unbelievable? That's just one story. I'm going to tell you, I talk to doctors, I talk to surgeons, I talk to nurses, I talk to neuroscientists. There is a story like this with every single person. Unbelievably cruel, unjustifiable in every way, shape, and form. There's got to be someone we can find on Twitter that can fix it. You sound like Parenti talking about Cuba. Well, because Parenti also went to Cuba. And when you go to Cuba, especially at the time that he went to Cuba, things were different. But when you go to Cuba and you see how responsive this government is to the needs of its people and what kind of vision they had and how they implemented said vision in spite of all of these restrictions, you can never unsee it. It's just a shocking revelation all of a sudden. It breaks apart every single thing that you might have heard from afar about who is the responsible party. An old tweet to your point. Yeah, this is Arturo Dominguez responding to Camila Cabello. Want to talk about all the more than 1,000 sanctions over 65 years, the failed invasion of the island? What about the CIA-backed terrorist attacks? Let's face it, that Cuba has been able to withstand the worst that the U.S. can throw at it for that long is pretty damned impressive. Pretty sure that's a sign of success, especially if there weren't any sanctions. And don't talk to me about repression where federal agents are executing people on the streets for nothing more than being observers. All the people, Marco Rubio's locking people up for speaking up for Palestine. And when it comes to free speech, let's talk about how Rubio just sanctioned several content creators and independent journals on the island for doing nothing more than showing U.S. embassy vehicles cutting in line for fuel during gas shortages. Y'all's duplicity is astounding. Yeah, like people will be like, oh my God, there's like tremendous repression. Belly of the Beast is an independent news outlet that operates operates inside of Cuba. Okay, they're comprised of like Cuban journalists, international reporters, and the like. Okay, totally independent. They literally got arrested by the government. Okay, and I was talking to them. Right, I was talking to one of the guys. Like they got arrested. They got grabbed and arrested in the process because there was like the SOS Cuba protests that were like the first time ever on the island. There was like actually a big movement. Right, this was like COVID. Post 2019, a lot of the oil embargo restrictions that actually started creating like rolling blackouts. The island actually was suffering a lot more visibly. Post 2019, this is the 2021 when the SOS Cuba, American-backed SOS Cuba protests were happening on the island, and they were covering it, and the government actually arrested them. I was like, so how do you feel about that, right? Like, because you obviously have told me a lot. Like, you talked about how like moral and how responsive this government is, but like, your guys got fucking arrested for covering this. He's like, brother, think about your treatment in the hands of the American government. Like the way they brutalize you personally. Like, you've been fucking, tear gassed and stun grenaded. Like, it's not acceptable, of course, but it's like the level of repression in comparison to like the everyday attitude of the American government and the American police towards freedom of expression is not even comparable. So yeah, there is a level of repression internally. Of course there is. They're under warlike conditions every day. Yeah, the dude literally said, free you. They're experiencing war. They're experiencing war. America is not experiencing war, and it does this to its own citizens. Now imagine how ridiculous, how repressive America would be if they were also experiencing fucking war. Also, that stuff is utterly irrelevant when we're talking about the sanctions. It's not relevant at all. Two things to be true at the same time. Yeah, a lot of Cubans want reform, but the embargo isn't making things better. If anything, the embargo is giving the people, giving the government more popularity. The government deserves the popularity. I will fucking stand on that, by the way. Yeah. And there are absolutely, here, I'll talk about the other side of this. Now that I've talked about the resilience of the island, the things that they've been able to accomplish, I'll talk about the other side as well. In 2019, while the oil restrictions were starting, which would then create a system of like rolling blackouts and visible poverty for the first time ever, according to like people that have been to Cuba before, according to people that have been living in Cuba for a long time, things started changing in 2019. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as it is currently because this is the maximalist version of the oil blockade. It's a full and total blockade. At the same time, this is before COVID, the Cuban government actually, for the first time ever, no longer just had free internet access, unrestricted, by the way, unrestricted free internet access in their parks and in certain government buildings and hotels and the like, but now they created a bandwidth, like a system where anyone could access the internet. And that's where the fucking National Endowment Foundation propaganda, Spanish-speaking Twitter accounts started popping up, going absolutely nutty mode. And yes, for a lot of young Cubans that saw the abundance and the wealth only 90 miles away, their immediate family members that have been able to escape Cuba and find a piece of that American prosperity, that's all they saw. They saw American capitalism and they saw the communism on the island as being the primary as bearing the primary responsibility for their everyday struggles. And nowadays there is a decent chunk, I will admit, there is a decent chunk of young Cubans that absolutely in Cuba that believe that the government is lying about the blockade. It's unbelievable, but it's true. There are people who have been deluded into thinking by way of their relatives, by way of the American propaganda that is like all over the internet, that think the reasons as to why there's rationing taking place because the government's like, ridiculous attitude towards rationing or whatever. It's like their mismanagement and not because of this insane blockade. I'm glad you're at least acknowledging this finally, Law. You call it delusion, but at least you're speaking to it. Yeah, I call it delusion because it's not true. I call it delusion because it's objectively untrue. I mean, how can you look at a system where you think America yields prosperity? I'm American. I live here. I know what it fucking looks like. And it's not as though this government is even taking the necessary steps to lie to you. They're straight up saying if Cubans do any sort of migration en masse because of the starvation that we have caused on that island, we will round their boats up and we will put their asses in Guantanamo Bay. How can you sit there and assume this administration that has openly said, if Cubans try to fucking come to the United States of America, we're going to round them up and we're going to send their asses back to Guantanamo Bay with the military, and you're over there going, oh no, it's actually not this fucking government's blockade. It's actually the mismanagement from the government itself. It's ridiculous. You can't excuse Cuban oppression as civil rights violation just because the U.S. does it too. What the fuck? I don't understand this logic. Not an excuse. It's utterly immaterial in the conversation that we're having. And the only reason why we have that conversation is to subtly justify, or maybe not so subtly justify, the actions that the American government is taking to make it seem as though there is a necessary reason for these sanctions. I'm not going to fucking put up with that shit. That's it. That's it. I've seen the impact. I've stared these people in the fucking eyes, okay? I cannot turn around. I cannot fucking turn around and act as though there is an alternative reason for why this exists. It's the same principle behind, but what about Hamas? As Israel was carrying out a genocide. And the reason why I bring up the government repression that we experience here is because I need you to understand the material conditions are very different in Cuba. And it's born out of this massively consequential sanctions regime that is starving the fucking island and frustrating the people. And the government literally has very limited resources to make sure that they continue surviving, that they continue fucking feeding the people, they continue actually giving people the necessary treatment for free, mind you. And then on top of that, people are like running around being like, you know, Donald Trump is awesome, he's gonna fucking save us. Under brutal, ruthless siege, any government would be infinitely more aggressive. When we were waging a world war, World War II, we rounded up every single Japanese person in California and put them in fucking concentration camps. No government is perfect, and especially one that's been suffocated for so long. You can acknowledge that, but but it's okay, and just because. No, I don't think you guys understand. I don't think you understand the point I'm making here, okay? I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to just tell you the fucking truth. That's it. This is the same process that we have to go through every single time. Every single time a conversation takes place. What about Iran? What about the Iranian government? Okay? What about Hamas? What about what Hamas does to his own people? If one much more powerful force is literally sieging this island nation with 11 million people, engaging in siege warfare, and the government is trying to maintain stability in the process, of course I'm going to try to get dumb fuck Americans to comprehend what that would look like if it happened here by pointing to historic examples of what we have done when we weren't being sieged by a much more powerful force, but we were engaging in a world war where Pearl Harbor happened and we put every single Japanese person in a concentration camp. What the fuck are you talking about? We engaged in the process of internment during our war. That's what governments do. They take a heavy-handed approach when they are constantly waging war. Now imagine what's going on in Cuba for 60 fucking years. These sanctions are not helpful. They are designed in a way where there is plausible deniability so that people that experience it eventually say, oh, the government is just lying about this blockade. It can't be this is all I've known. All I've known my whole life is just like fucking unnecessary poverty. This sucks. There's wealth right there, 90 miles out the coastline, prosperity. The reason why I'm bringing this part up, by the way, is because I need people to understand, like, of course there are people that live through this process and develop this opinion, just as there were tens of millions of Americans who looked at the current design of American society and thought a right-wing fascist monster was actually going to create a new wave of American prosperity. There are people with different mentalities everywhere. No one is fucking monolithic, and no one is going to be on the ball. Just because you live through it doesn't mean you're going to have ancient wisdom and you're going to be able to figure out exactly why things are happening. But I'm sorry, it's just pure victim blaming. And I don't want to do that. It's ridiculous. The reason why I criticize the US government when we slip on journalistic freedom and freedom of speech infringements is because there is no country that has the same power gap between us and another country that's like enforcing its will upon the American population. It's not comparable. There is no country that is the hegemonic superpower. We are the global imperial hegemon. So there is no comparison where another country that is enforcing a siege upon the American population and the American government is trying to hold it together and trying to fight back against it. And in the process, trying to maintain stability and therefore engaging in repression. The reason why, of course, I criticize the American government's form of repression is because America is the hegemonic superpower. It's not even relevant to the equation that there are naysayers out there. All of the world's protesters can get together and it doesn't change the American calculation, the American government's calculation one bit. And To Kill a Nation, Michael Parenti addresses this so perfectly, okay? They also see how shitty their lives are and that money and energy goes to the hotels that aren't allowed to stay in. I know that's not as relevant now. The biggest issue in the oil embargo right now and the energy crisis has been building for years. Yes, absolutely. So this is the other aspect of it. And I personally experienced this like myself. I felt gross about the system as well because we would walk around, okay? People are, experiencing abject poverty and darkness, complete darkness, but the hotels have generators. Hotels are privately owned, right? They're privately owned and they have access to oil, right? Because they can purchase it because there's a black market for oil. The government is aware that there's a black market for oil. They have a queue system. You know, people with like EVs can participate in the queue system. All of this is like literal fucking on the ground reporting coming to you live from Cuba, okay? There's a queue system. You buy it for like $1 a gallon, right? And then you sell it. And the price of oil right now is $10 a liter. We asked every cab driver, $10 a liter. And the way it works is people with electric vehicles also get into the queue system, but they don't need the oil, right? They have EVs. Yeah, it's that fucking expensive. A doctor told me that the average salary for a doctor in Cuba is around $17 a month. $17 a month. But that wasn't the problem. The real problem was the fact that that's around like 4,000 Cuban pesos, something around that. I can't remember the exact numbers, right? The issue is doctors have to go back and forth. The hospital, right? They don't live at the hospital. They live at home. It's 500 pesos each way to go to the fucking hospital. If you're making 4,000 pesos a month and it's 500 every day, it's unbelievable. It's just not, you can't do it. How the fuck are you supposed to make it to the hospital? You can't. It's insane. It's unsustainable. This is destroying Iran, not the Iranian government. It's definitely designed to destroy both. I think liberals need to retire the people versus the alien, illegitimate regime framing, since those starving and bombing these countries don't make any distinction. Weakening state capacity is a feature of their civilian punishment strategy. Abso-fucking-lutely. Do you understand why I'm talking about it in the way that I am?